My name is Tom Chavez, and we're recording this all the way live here in San Francisco at our new headquarters for Superset, and we have a very special guest today, my big brother, Marty Chavez. Marty, say hi.
Thank you for inviting me, Tom. It's great to be here.
Boy, okay, I'm going to just freestyle the bio.
Oh, God. Okay.
So Marty was born in Albuquerque, New Mexico. We're not going to go all the way back to that, but Marty is my big brother, a seasoned computer scientist, studied biochemistry eons ago when nobody thought that there'd be an intersection between computer science and biochemistry. Put a thumbtack in that. We'll come back to it. Was at Stanford, built early software companies here in Silicon Valley. And then I remember we were roommates, Marty, and then you went away for a weekend to New York.
And never came back.
And you never came back. Yeah. And I had to find a new apartment.
You had to
and
get
stuff like that.
I remember you seemed a little resentful about
it's
that.
It's okay. No, I'm over it now.
Yeah.
So we worked that out. Went to Goldman Sachs. Big rise at Goldman Sachs. Multiple jobs running various segments of the firm, including CIO and CFO, trading, equities, all of the above. Right.
Bunch of things.
And now Marty is the vice chair and a seasoned investor, continuing all of that work at Sixth Street, a firm based here in San Francisco. Marty, I'm so glad you're here.
It's great to be here, Tom.
All right. So we're going to chop it up here a little bit at the beginning with some kooky rapid fire questions. Just to loosen you up.
Okay, great.
I interviewed my friend Seamus Blackley recently. Seamus, another Albuquerque boy, Jonathan Blackley. Seamus Blackley, who is the inventor of Xbox and went off and did a bunch of cool things.
Yeah.
And he was remembering that you had hacked the kernel of the PDP-10 at Albuquerque Academy.
PDP-11.
Was it a PDP-11?
Okay. It was.
It was an 11. And you'd hacked the kernel and left a little Easter egg there for people like Seamus. Do you remember what it said?
I don't.
According to
I
Seamus,
honestly don't. That was 1979.
Holy guacamole. They made computers then.
They did.
Right?
They did.
Well, according to Seamus, you said Marty Chavez was here. That was your little Easter egg.
Very creepy.
For him and others to find.
Sounds about right.
So you remember, you don't remember what you wrote, but you remember the Easter egg.
I remember the Easter egg, and I remembered the main thing that I did on that computer.
Which was?
I didn't want to go to PE.
Okay.
And so I cut a deal with the school where I would write a computer program to schedule games for the sports teams and schedule lunch table assignments. And then I became Cupid at Academy, and very popular because if you wanted to sit next to your boyfriend or girlfriend, you needed...
Plot thickens. We had these tables and you sat at tables, you were assigned tables, and you had no choice in the matter, except now I find out all these years later.
It was all algorithmic.
Oh, yeah, right. That's right. So, Marty, I have a friend who you met a couple times from college. His name is David Nozick.
Yes.
And he is just such a kook.
Yes.
He is the king of false numerical comparisons.
Okay.
And he would say it with his Boston accent. It would sound like, Tommy, would you say that I'm 5.7 times better looking than you, or 3.2 times better looking? And of course, 5.7 times, obviously, Dave. So one of his favorites was, Tommy, would you say your brother Marty is 10 times smarter than you, or 7.9 times smarter than you? What is it, Marty? 7.9 or 10? Answer the question.
I have to go with 10, Tom.
You're 10. All right. And by the way, folks, I am the middle child.
So you don't mind this stuff.
Let's do this real fast. We would sit on our aunt's chair, visiting her on Sundays, in our little Sunday shirts, and our mom had combed our hair. We look like...
the same way.
In the same way, yeah. And Marty would be sitting there, and Marty's the smart one. This is not a therapy session. I'm okay with all this. I see you all looking
I was
nervous.
the smart one. Ricky was the blonde one.
And Ricky was the blonde, good-looking one. And our Aunt Pete that would say, to our mom. But Rosario, just look at him. He could be a movie star
Or president.
or president.
president.
He's so good looking. And I'd be
was
sitting
so
on the
resentful.
couch, and I'd be there on the couch like,
Zimmer.
hi. Hi.
I do remember that.
As with the roommate situation, I'm over it. I'm healthy. I'm fine. Okay, so Marty, first in family to go to college. This was a big leap for our family in Albuquerque. And I think maybe you had been on a plane before, but was this the first time anybody in the family had actually been on a jet plane when you flew?
No, I had gone once before. I spent the summer in Spain. I'd been on a plane one time before getting on a plane to go to Boston. But it's true that no one in the family had ever been to Boston.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I remember you and Dad got on a plane.
What was going to be just me.
Okay.
Because we were broke.
Right.
And then at the last minute, Mom and Dad decided somehow to scrape together money for a plane ticket for Dad.
Right.
But he wasn't going to be able to have a hotel room. So the idea was drop me off, leave immediately.
Okay.
And my central memory is he drops me off. I was in Strauss, right next to the Harvard T station. And I watched our dad descend back into the T station. I was feeling really sad because I was really young as well. And then he comes back up and he takes out his wallet and he hands me a $20 bill.
His last 20.
His last 20, which was my 20 for the semester.
Yeah. Well, $20 at a time. But yes, I appreciate your sharing that because that is family lore for all of us. We remember other stories that we talk about. By the way, we both get a little verklempt, really.
Yeah. But remember, we had the coop. Our books were paid for. We had the union. We had a place to sleep. We were good.
Right. $275 for a round trip plane ticket to Boston?
Ugh.
Hell no. There's just no way. Hey, well, let's switch gears here, Marty. I want to talk about software. So you were building software in the 90s, right? And this is before you went to Goldman.
Yes.
You had a startup at that time.
And I had just finished my PhD at Stanford.
Right. That's right. And you've been recruited to this software company.
Yeah.
I reflected on that weekend when you get on a plane now to New York and become a Goldman guy.
Yeah.
Do you ever reflect back on, at that moment, leaving Silicon Valley during the big run-up of software?
All the time.
Yeah?
So the short version of what had happened is I had just gotten a PhD in AI in medicine. We had a program at Stanford for that.
Medical
Unbelievably.
informatics at the time.
Medical information sciences, and it was called SumXAIM, Stanford Medical Center, Artificial Intelligence in Medicine. And it didn't work out, right? We could solve toy problems. So we were working on one of the great threads of AI, which was expert systems, and specifically probabilistic expert systems. So model the reasoning of experts. And at the same time, there were a bunch of people who I am embarrassed to say we disdained.
That's right.
They had a completely ridiculous idea of starting at the bottom and simulating neurons. We used to laugh, like, that'll work.
Those papers were ridiculous.
It worked. And
It
ours
sure did. Man, were we wrong.
in an epic way, and ours did not.
Yeah. But it was axiomatically pure.
It was beautiful, and it was computationally intractable. Right.
But you could write cool papers with interesting theories.
And you could get a
20,
PhD.
right?
And what is the definition of a dissertation? It's one with 3 faculty signatures on it. Yeah, that is all. So I got a PhD, and I had this little startup company, which we could get into or not. But the main point is that artificial intelligence had failed in such a spectacular way that we even stopped saying the word. That's when we would start to say machine learning, right? Or we'd mumble artificial intelligence and look down at the ground. And I remember there were so many great people in the department. There were 3 who really stood out for me. One is our friend Eric Horvitz, who's everywhere in AI these days. He's the chief scientist of Microsoft. David Heckerman at Amazon. One is me. And,
Wait, you're talking about the cohort.
The little cohort.
Yeah. But David, Eric,
me,
you, Cooper.
Cooper.
Whatever happened to him?
You're forgetting someone. No, he's still in the business.
Okay.
And you're forgetting someone who very cleverly decided that medicine was too hard and he was going to use this stuff to solve an easier but important problem. What movie to watch tonight? Reed Hastings.
Oh, right.
He was in the program too.
Right.
He was in the program.
right.
He first went off and started Pure Software.
Right,
Right.
okay.
And
We're
then
fleshing
shortly
that out,
after that, he started Netflix back
That's
when they would mail you the DVDs. So important to pick your problem domain. While all this was happening and AI was failing and Reed was starting Pure Software, I, out of the blue, got a letter at Stanford. And it was from a headhunter. And he said, I've been instructed by Goldman Sachs to make a list of entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley with PhDs in computer science from Stanford. And you are on my list. Please come out.
Oh.
I was broke. I wanted to see my college buddies in New York. I went out there. I arrived at Goldman Sachs, and I remember thinking, this is Goldman Sachs. This place looks like a dump, right? And so that the first awareness was it was a partnership.
You don't have that sensation when you walk into that office today.
Not anymore, but they didn't want to spend money on things like carpets and furniture back then.
Okay.
And they asked if I wanted the math quiz or the CS quiz. And I said, I'll take either one's fine, both. And that, I didn't know that's what they were looking for. They wanted people who could go between math and CS because the problem they were having is that IT didn't know the math and the math people couldn't write scalable software. Right. So I just walked into it. But you'll remember, I accepted the offer. They made me an offer that day. I came back and I said, you may not remember this. I said, I'm leaving on Friday. So I did come back for 4 days. And then that Friday, I was gone.
Yeah.
And on the plane, you can't make this up. I pull up the Wall Street Journal and I'm reading it. And for the first time, I saw in print a URL. That's a big deal, right? You would never see in the mainstream world. The URLs, 93. URLs were a kind of a secret geeky thing.
Right.
And as the Wall Street Journal, I remember thinking, oh, I might be going in the wrong direction.
Yeah. Well, incredibly prescient, though, of Goldman at that time. To your point about the IT guys who are buying metal and spending money indulgently to write lots of onesie-twosie programs for traders to do the thing. Like there wasn't a discipline or an understanding even of software and the possibility of. But then on the quant side at Goldman, to find daywalkers like you who could go back and forth between the two, that was a remarkable.
It was a brainwave. Lloyd Blankfein, who was a foreign exchange trader at the time, gets all the credit for the idea.
Lloyd was the former CEO of Goldman
for many years. He would ask IT, he would say, I want a risk management system. And they go off for a year and they show him what they wrote. Right. And he would see it and he'd say, that's not what I wanted. You might say it in a more colorful way than that. And they just kept iterating, and Lloyd realized, and this was the brainwave, he needed to get those computer geeks and get one and put that person next to him. And the idea that this person would then absorb the trading business by osmosis and figure out what to write. That was Armin, who started our group. That was my boss. Right. And then I was just, I was number 12 in that group.
Yeah. No, you're flashing me back. As with so many things in life, Marty's my big brother and he paves a path and I follow a lot of it. So I ended up at Stanford and I'm taking these classes. Just to amplify the thing you said, I remember what snobs we were. There was this neural networks class, and I took it, and I was just assaulted by the stupidity of it. Like, I was so brain dead, and these little.
I thought it was too brain dead to even take the class.
So taking this seriously, and then they say, "Well, it doesn't work." You know, I got a 2-layer neural network, so that doesn't work. I'll add a 3rd layer. Like, that's crap on top of crap, right? I mean, your first thing didn't work, but again, man, in the annals of wrongology. Right, this entire
wildly wrong
of computer scientists, and big, huge ups to people like Jeff Hinton and others, who just
unbelievably tenacious. Hinton, Bengio, right, that whole crowd against disdain, opposition, ridicule. Absolutely. It's hard to really communicate how dire it was, and they kept at it for years and years and years.
Unbelievable. Nobel Prize of Brewing.
Yeah.
And there for those people. Hey, so let's switch gears here a little bit. At Superset, we like to talk about, we say our strategy is people, product, customers in that order. And when it comes to people, we attract, discern, grow, retain great people. That's our ambition. So I was wondering if you would share with us your single most important lesson learned about people in a work context. How do you harness people power?
My most important lesson was in the dot-com boom. I left Goldman Sachs, and I was briefly at Credit Suisse. Remember that, for a couple of years, where I learned gratitude for Goldman Sachs. And then the dot-com boom happened, and I thought, well, I know people with money, and I'm a computer scientist, and I'm going to get in on this as well. And I put together the A team from CS and Goldman Sachs, and raised a bunch of money. It was the peak of the dot-com boom.
Yep.
I remember sending out a convertible note to everybody I knew and saying, if you want to invest, here's the bank account. If you have any questions or concerns, don't invest. It took no questions. There was no plan.
Right.
Like,
Send money.
send money. And I still remember this, going to it was Chemical Bank back then, and looking at the bank balance, and it had $15 million in it. And I thought, wow, that was easy. That was the best moment of the company.
which usually correlates with a big raise, whether it's a fund or like that's the beginning of a long decline.
Yeah. And so then the next thing that happened is I put together this A team, and what was happening was a lot of drama and a lot of entitlement and a lot of incredible prima donna behavior. And I remember turning to Brad Rubenstein, who's known since forever. When we were both grad students, he at Berkeley in databases with Stonebreaker, and me at Stanford. And he had worked with me in my previous startup. I said, Brad, I need you to come and be our VP of engineering. And he said, no, you don't need me at all. You guys need some basic coaching on communication and integrity. And he said, all I need for you to do, it was his associate, Adam Josephs. Do you remember Adam?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And he said, Adam said, I need you, you're the CEO. Give me 2 days, not overlapping a weekend, where every person in your company is in the seat from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern time with a 1 hour break at noon. You give me the 2 consecutive days, I will be there. I couldn't get it. I couldn't deliver it.
Unbelievable.
Doctor's appointments. What's coaching?
Got to water your plants.
Are you micromanaging me? I came from Goldman Sachs. So, oh my God. And that was the whole problem right there. Right. And so I came out of that. That is the single most important thing that ever happened to me in my career.
Yeah.
Because we did this coaching on how to tightly specify a project with binary measures of success. Everybody on the team listed a 1-pager that is the contract for the project, and the project succeeds if all the measures of success are true, as assessed by an independent third party who is not a domain expert,
Right.
on the delivery date. Otherwise, the project has failed.
Yeah.
Right? That standard changed my way of thinking about everything, and it led to practices, one that I'm somewhat infamous for at Goldman Sachs. Someone new would come into the org, and I would say, would you please do this by Friday close of business? And that person would say, sure, I'll try to get that done.
There is no try.
Everybody would look down at the ground. Oh no, he's going to say it. And I would say, great, and I will try to pay you.
Well, it's Yoda. There is no try. Just
Just do it, or tell me.
Right.
Just communicate with clarity. Tell me you're not committed to doing it, and there's a non-zero chance it'll happen,
Right.
and I'll probably be completely happy with that.
It's interesting because I remember Brad Rubenstein, very well-trained computer scientist. Lots of, in my experience, lots of great engineers, and a lot of us were trained as geeks. You have this moment where you realize, oh, yeah, I could try to continue to be the smartest guy in the room, but that's probably not sustainable. And really, if I want this thing to work, it's about creating the soil conditions, the mindsets and methods for people to get shit done, right? And I see a lot of engineers who want to level up and struggle with that. Like, this is not about the math. Like, yeah, it's good to know the math and it's good to code and all the other things. But if you want to take that journey, right, it's such a powerful, like, I remember those moments where, like, it just washed over me, like, oh no, like, this is not about being smart. And, because you're trained you take this exam and you do the math, you're wrong or you're right.
Right.
There is no right. And it's you individually doing the thing.
But we saw this at Goldman. We built a digital twin before it was fashionable. We built a digital twin of the trading business. Why was that powerful? You could inspect the digital twin, ask it counterfactual questions, run experiments that would be dangerous or fatal in real life, where you might lose $100 billion. But it was only in software simulation.
Right.
And this kind of thing turned out to be incredibly valuable. A long list of engineers would go to competitors and say, I'll build that Goldman thing for you. And it didn't work anywhere. And they were the same engineers.
Okay. Yeah.
The soil wasn't right. One of the things that I'm incredibly grateful for at Goldman is that someone like me, who was a total oddball for Goldman Sachs in '93, right? They welcomed me and they created the conditions for me to be successful. And Lloyd would say, like, I'm not 100% sure what Marty's talking about, but I want you to do that. And that worked incredibly well.
That's leadership.
Yeah.
So after the financial crisis, Goldman, I think it's safe to say, saw an exodus of well-trained people who would otherwise, my God, you get a Goldman job, you're taking the Goldman job. Many of them, you start to feel this creep. They're starting to move into tech, or at least there's some competition. Whereas before it was, but of course.
I wouldn't say exodus, but yes, that is the right way to frame it. There was another path.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, speaking of attract, discern, retain, grow, how did you? And you were CIO at around this time. I forget the terminology.
So the financial crisis, I got some battlefield promotions, and then I became head of the strat, or the quant group,
right,
in 2009, kind of right after the financial crisis. Right. Then I became head of equities trading, which was a very strange thing, right? Depending on who you were, you thought, wow, this is great, like a computer geek as head of trading. This was so radical. Go ahead, right? Or you were terrified. Right. So there was a mixed reception to that.
Right.
And then after a trading error, kind of a big one, right, where we there was this is classic. This, you can't make this up. There was a line in the code that said price gets 1, no comment, magic number. Right? Why 1? Why not some other thing, right? And the idea was that the price would get turned to the correct price before sent to the exchange, but a configuration error caused those trades to go to the exchange. So guess what? We bought a lot of stuff for $1. And that's how I became Chief Information Officer. And that was 2013.
So during that time, how did you think about attracting and retaining talent when suddenly there's more competition than you had experienced before?
Yeah, so one of the things we would do is we'd sell New York, right? There's a certain set of people who wanted to be in New York City.
Yeah.
And the other thing that we would do is we would say, look at the commitment our firm is making to engineers. It was well on its way. It's about 20% of the firm is engineers. So I think people are often surprised to find that, right? Google is 50%, Goldman Sachs is 20%, but when I joined, it was 2%, right? So we'd say, look at this commitment to engineering. These are the kinds of careers that you can have. If you just looked at compensation, we're very competitive with Silicon Valley and always had been. And the last bit was, there's a certain kind of engineer who wants to work on something, a real problem domain. Some of them want to work in healthcare. Turns out some of them want to work and finance.
Right.
And those are the people that we would find.
Yeah. Well, kudos. It worked.
It worked.
Yeah. And, Mom did one of these community calls with us about 2 years ago, I think. And she had a lot of wisdom to share with everybody in her plain spoken way. I was wondering if you had some advice from...
You put her on a... Wow.
Yeah, and she played along. She was great.
It reminds me of the time, Tom, when the New York Times did a profile piece on me, and the journalist said, "I want to talk to Marty's mom," and Goldman said, "Oh no, you can't talk to this." And I said, "Oh, I think Mom will be just fine."
Yeah.
And the journalist said, "So, Mrs. Chavez, your son works for a company that some have said caused the financial crisis. How do you feel about that?" And she said, "Young man, you know better. You should be ashamed of yourself." After that, Goldman said, "Can we use your mom more?"
That sounds like Mom.
Yeah.
By the way, one of the things that is hard for people who are close to us is don't you dare say something less than shiny and perfect about one of her children. Yeah. She will reject the premise.
She can't even hear it.
Yeah, she cannot hear it. But so I'm wondering if you could share some advice from Mom, some principles, some ideas that would ring true for company builders and entrepreneurs over here at Superset.
Well, one of the things I learned, and you learned it too, is Mom's the ultimate startup entrepreneur. Have 5 kids, no money, get them through Harvard. Ruthless prioritization.
That's right.
Right? There were just a bunch of things that were not important, and so they didn't happen. And there was no time for it at all. And there was the goal.
Yeah.
Right? So I learned that. One thing I remember, and some of this sort of slips and slides in memory, do you remember being at dinner and one of our siblings saying he wanted to grow up and do something to help Hispanics?
I do remember this.
And Mom was not having that at all. She said, "That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard." But where was she going with it? She said, "The thing you can do that will most help Hispanics is be incredibly successful and visible yourself."
Right.
And then
Blaze a path.
Large numbers of people will see that. I have to say, I understood it abstractly, but I didn't really get it. I thought, shouldn't we be doing something actually more specific and tangible? But then you remember we ended up, when Aletta graduated from Harvard, and then all 5 of us had graduated, and there was the Today Show broadcast from Harvard, and
I recall rocking it on the Today Show personally with my mom. Go on.
we had this kind of moment, and it went viral as much as it could in those days before social media. And the number of people who write me on LinkedIn, I'm sure this happens to you, usually LinkedIn, on a regular basis and say, "I watched your family on the Today Show.
Right.
And my mom said, we can do that."
There you go.
And then we did.
That's right.
We did our version of that. This has happened so many times. And I'm sure many more didn't actually find me and write to me to share this. But once again, Mom was right.
That's right. Yeah. I look, Mom is our mother. It's a funny thing because sometimes we talk about it, and I find, people receive it, but it's a little like, wow, these boys really love their mama. And it's just tectonic, right? What she achieved, and it's genius in a way that you couldn't. We could go. Dad would bring home. This is another vivid memory. We're at the dinner table. Mom was a secretary at Sandia National Labs. My dad was a draftsman. My dad would see guys at Sandia National Labs doing stuff on those computers. Really. And the prescience and the genius around both of them coming back in the 70s at our dinner table, we don't know what those guys are doing with the computers, but you got to get in the computers.
Dad told me when I was 10, computers are the future.
Right.
And you'll be really good at computers. and he would somehow finagle a TI Silent 700 terminal with those modems that were the
Right.
gaskets that you'd plug into the old-fashioned phone handset.
That's right. I
And
made
I
a
would
terrible noise.
get on the ARPANET, the predecessor of the internet.
Marty would like nullify the family phone line for hours and hours and hours because he's on one of those section cup modem connections.
But can I share just one last mom story
Yeah.
I have to? Because this one is primal for me. I remember we went to a big family event, and Uncle Garb was there. And
Paint a picture of Uncle Garb.
I admired Uncle Garb. He was very handsome. He had a lot of ink.
Well, you're continuing the tradition.
I'm continuing
You have
the
a little
tradition.
real estate free right there. You
That
can
was
try to
just
get
a
something
tiny
over there.
spot.
Okay.
And,
For
he
people
wa-
listening, Marty has a lot of tats. He's famous. Everything's covered.
Uncle Garb was really kind of hardcore.
He was a gangster.
He was a gangster.
He was an OG gangster, leaning against the wall. Tommy, look at you. I say, you cannot let your mama dress you up like that.
He does it much better than I do. Yeah, let me try it. He'd say, Marty, what's the matter? You don't got no car. You don't got no girlfriend.
Estás chingado. No girlfriend, no car. Chingado.
And Mom, and I remember being so upset by this.
Yeah.
And Mom would say, the gringos are not the problem.
Yeah.
Remember? She would say, if we cared about education as much as we care about cars and girlfriends, we would be in a different place. And that, I love to say this because it's so politically incorrect, but I get to narrate it in our mom's voice because she actually said it. But it made a big impression on me, right? Which is not waiting for some kind of social justice to happen. Right? It needs to happen.
It must.
It must happen.
And by the way, with a strong conviction that you all are going to be part of the change that needs and you're Mexican, don't forget it. You're going to be part of that change.
Yeah.
But with a different path, right? And just the clarity to trailblaze and to never apologize.
And she would also say, you're Mexican. Boo-hoo.
Yeah.
You're going to have to work twice
Nobody
as
cares.
hard. Nobody cares. Nobody's interested. You're going to have to work twice as hard to get half as far. And then when I realized I was gay, I turned that in my own head into, well, now I'm going to have to work 10 times as hard.
Right. Well, so we're going to get going here in a minute, but to close this off, at the community call with my mom, I remember asking her, well, Mom, after the whole journey, do you have any regrets? Are there any things that you would have done differently? And you just have to see my mom just paralyzed, like, are you stupid? That is a stupid question, Tommy. No, counterfactual. Right? It's just a certain.
We nailed it.
Nailed it. 10 from the Russian judge. Okay, so let's switch gears. I want to talk about AI. As an investor, and as we were assembling, we were talking about all the hype.
Yeah.
And we are in one of those cycles. We are going to fall into a trough of despair. I don't know exactly when. Feels like meaningfully soon. As an investor, how do you separate hype from tangible possibility right now?
Yeah. So we haven't invested in any AI companies. Now, part of that is we invest at later stages, growth and beyond. So they haven't gotten to the growth stage yet.
Yep.
There are a few entrepreneurs where I'm in the seed round just on a personal basis. And I will say, I want to lead your growth round someday, but they're not at that point, right? And look, some obvious things. Any company that just added .ai to his name. It's like, on foundation models, and of course I have a particular point of view, I don't see how I or we would invest in someone building a foundation model. And part of that is we just know what it takes, right? The order of $100 billion of very physical stuff, compute, CapEx, right? And so a few organizations. You can count them. How many organizations on the planet have $100 billion? It's limited. I think what's not clear is where open source is gonna play here. Developing thesis is that the foundation models are akin to operating systems. And just as we have Windows, Mac OS, and Linux, maybe something similar will happen, and Linux there'll be some open source, but people may want the branded version from Red Hat or IBM with support. I would expect there'll be some echoes as all of this evolves.
Right.
One thing that's very exciting and very intense, and I've seen this in companies where the friends have started or I'm a seed investor, the foundation models are evolving so rapidly, right? So imagine a startup, there's many like this, that said, wouldn't it be great if we could break apart PDFs and then give the text and images to a foundation model? And they did a lot of work to make that happen. And then the next version of the foundation model just figures out the PDF format and just give it the PDF. Right. And so we're seeing this again and again.
That happened like 3 days after.
Yeah. It's a kind of assimilation, right? So anybody that's just building a layer on top of a foundation model, you've got to expect the next iteration of the foundation model to just, you write the prompt, just do this thing, right? The joke is write Salesforce. Right. When will an LLM just do that? Right. I think when you get to that point,
Vivek's down.
Okay, this is where it starts to change, right? If you look at Salesforce and substitute any company in here that's been as successful as they have been, is you need all those use cases and all that testing in the real world, and that's all been incorporated in the product. So I don't know about an LLM doing that.
That's right.
What I do think is very interesting, and we're starting to see this now, is software companies that use the LLM as a set of services and then orchestrate maybe multiple LLMs, multiple pieces of software, and make some workflow disappear under the hood. So I'm very interested in those.
I see Gall and some of them.
Am I pitching one of your companies here?
You are. This was not, we did not rehearse.
We did not.
Orchestration mediation, as happens in technology, let 1,000 flowers bloom. The next layer of possibility is in the orchestration of all of these models with the right data for the right task at the right cost. Nobody's thinking about cost of serving gas fees adequately.
Yeah, adequately. That is true. And our firm, we're taking that very seriously, and we also don't want to be tied to a foundation model / operating system. Right?
Well, and so the long arc of technology, you can have, there'll be a red hat for LLMs.
Maybe it's Hugging Face.
Maybe Hugging Face is it already. But in the longer arc, it feels like open systems win. Windows takes along.
There's a lot of Windows out there.
Yeah. It's an indomitable.
Not on servers, on servers, but yeah. I don't know.
Any prognostication there? Open source versus
my best hypothesis in prognostication is that it's going to be like OSs. There's going to be some proprietary OSs that expose APIs, and then there's going to be some open source OSs that also expose APIs. But if you want, you can look under the API, and there'll be a community that supports it.
Yeah.
But nobody, I ask so many people, are there going to be 5 models or 500 million instances of models running out there? And that's a pretty wide market for people to say, I don't know which one.
Yeah. And back to your Salesforce example, certainly our thesis is that, we're approaching a time when you can say, go to ChatGPT, write a CRM system for me and get something good. Maybe. Salesforce's primary competitive advantage, I think, is the usage data, the customer data that they've accumulated, which is not open source.
Yes.
By the way, don't put that into ChatGPT, Salesforce employees, if you're listening to this.
Well, no, this is a very big deal, right? We're taking this very seriously, right? We never wanted people to just upload all our stuff to the cloud.
Right.
It's the same thing when you're sending it to an LLM, right?
That's right.
And so, yeah.
Hey, so Marty, if you're a superset founder looking to build a breakthrough multi-billion-dollar startup,
Okay.
what space, what problem do you go after?
That was not on the prep list.
Yeah, it was.
Was it? Okay. Well, okay. So I already gave it away. Like, orchestration, right? One thing that I just don't know the answer to is if you're starting something, you probably don't have the data. And where are you going to get the data? And is it a chicken and egg problem, right? So I've seen some interesting companies that are doing, for instance, fraud detection for banks. And they're starting to get some network effects where they find a fraud pattern in one bank and incorporate it into their software, and now it's better, right? So I think whatever you're doing, it has to have that feature where you've got some kind of data rights to it. And we are past the point where you could just be loosey-goosey about the data rights. Like, oh, maybe we get the right to train an LLM on it, and maybe we don't, right? Everybody's well aware of this right now, and the people who have the IP want to get paid for it somehow, right? So I haven't really answered your question, but it has to have this feature where you're gathering data and you're monetizing it over time, and it has to be a non-trivial orchestration.
100%.
That, but then I hear what's going on with the LLMs, and all the talk now is about agents that train against an API library, or agents that watch video games, and right. So even that, I think it goes back to, you've got to have the data layer that nobody else has.
We subscribe. Okay, so here on the podcast, Marty, we do this kooky thing. We call it totally unpaid for promotion, where because our millions of followers, this is a huge moneymaker.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't know that.
It's huge.
You're one of those top 10 podcasts.
Joe Rogan. Who cares? So we do a totally unpaid for promotion where our guest gets to boost something that they like. Here's a prompt I'm going to offer. So you're a business guy.
Yeah.
I pretend to play a business guy now and again, and business people love to play golf.
Yes.
You don't golf, as I recall.
I do.
So
Dad
what do you,
tried to teach me.
right? So what do you give a boost to the thing that you tell business people when they want to neighbor with you, and then you let them down and you say, I don't golf, but we could ...
We could spar.
Oh. All right, say more.
Name the location.
Okay. Damn.
Yeah, jiu-jitsu.
Yes. Marty's you've gotten into jiu-jitsu.
I've gotten so far into jiu-jitsu. I have gotten the bug in a very big way. Everywhere I'm traveling, we're always finding the jiu-jitsu studio and writing ahead and getting some lessons and signing up for class. I'm going to do in LA on Sunday, I'm going to do a 4-hour mini tournament. Just if you've done jiu-jitsu, that's a lot.
I love
of jiu-jitsu.
I won't go golfing with you, but let's go to Fight Club. Right?
Well, I picked so I had gone to jiu-jitsu once, and the whole thing seemed so chaotic and crazy and dangerous, and I had no idea what was going on. And then I just didn't go back. And then about 2 years ago, one of my partners at 6th Street, this great guy, lives here in San Francisco, came up to me and said, I checked your calendar with your assistant and you're free, and bring some workout gear. What are we doing? I said, just trust me. And he had arranged a jiu-jitsu lesson for me, where the guy broke it down and I started to understand it. And now I watched the UFC.
That is
fight.
shocking.
Can you? I know
My
you
brother
can't even
Marty's
process
a
this.
UFC. I've been a UFC. I don't do jiu-jitsu, but I love UFC, and I've been watching UFC. Like, it's become okay now, right, to say that you like UFC. But 10, 15 years ago, when I was watching UFC, and I would tell, oh, I love UFC. It's amazing. And at parties, and people would look at you like you're like, let's call the police.
Yeah, exactly. And I would have been one of those people. But now I was down in LA with 20 of my jiu-jitsu bros, and we're screaming, move the knee, and just shouting advice and getting way, way, way into it. But I wanted to pick a sport that I can do for the rest of my life. And The great thing about it is if you want it to stop, you just tap.
There you go.
Right. So ego's where you get the problems. And that's another life lesson.
As in life, yes, exactly. Okay, I'm going to ask 2 more questions, and then we're going to open it up here to the crew in case there are questions over here. So you touched on this before, where at Goldman Sachs, you're building a simulation,
Yes.
a very large-scale simulation of your trading positions, and then you poke it. What could go wrong? How bad could it get?
Yes.
And this was one of Goldman's great sources of power as it navigated.
We did see it
meltdown.
and still do as part of the secret sauce. Yes.
Right. And so good old Timothy Geithner, I don't know the origin of these ideas, but there was born the idea of the stress test. That's right, the stress test now.
It was a different Fed governor. But
Who was
yes.
it? Was it Volcker?
No, it was. I'll remember his name in a second.
Okay. So anyway, there's this concept now of the stress test that ensures the proper functioning of financial markets.
Yes.
Banks have to show up, and and the regulator requires you to go through the stress test.
Which means you have to be able to simulate your whole bank.
Right.
All the cash flows, the income statement, the balance sheet, 9 quarters forward into the future.
So in an economist op-ed, you were observing some of the potential disarray or troubles with big tech, and proposed the concept of a stress test for a tech platform.
Yes.
I wonder if you could just say a little bit about that here in this context.
Yes.
We have a privacy company here at Superset called Catch. A lot of us are passionate about these topics just on a first principles basis.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about what you mean by that. But then I also want you to speak to why hasn't anybody taken you up on that idea? Because I think it's a damn good idea, but there seem to be no takers.
Yeah, no takers. So Governor Tarullo, he was the one who thought of this. So there was a very little tiny bit of text in the Dodd-Frank Act that said the Federal Reserve shall require periodic stress tests. Said hardly anything more than that. Didn't define a stress test. So Governor Tarullo and the team, he was vice chair of supervision, they turned this into this whole thing. And many people on Wall Street will say, we had to hire thousands of people and we've never been the same, and oh, poor us. It's the best. It's one of the smartest things that anybody ever thought of. And it is intense, right? You have to simulate your firm. In the simulation, there's tests of the simulation. How was it challenged? How did you attest that it was challenged? Like, this is very complicated stuff. And we saw it in the pandemic, right? Massive stress. The one thing that didn't happen was the banking system falling over. The banks all had sufficient capital and liquidity for that massive stress out of the blue because of this. So the idea in The Economist was, why don't we require the social media firms to simulate their amplification of posts?
Okay.
They have a model.
They sure do.
Yeah.
And all of us who've been in the boiler room about tech know that they have a model. I don't see, when they show up at panels or congressional hearings, there seems to me to be a lot of disavowal and, oh, I wish I could, but that's so hard, and we wouldn't even know how to.
Yeah, well, guess the bank said the same thing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's too hard. And Tarullo's answer was, thank you for sharing that. Here's the deadline, right? And so that's what actually worked. Now, when I wrote that op-ed piece and I said, use it, instead of calculating capital reserves for banks, use it to calculate a pollution of the infosphere tax for amplifying disinformation or amplifying based on emotional resonance, right? And you can amplify it, but it's going to cost you something.
Right.
And then that's how you change behavior, right? To me, this is very basic, right? So banks, you want them to hold more capital. What do? You say, you can't pay your dividend. You can't do your share buyback. And ultimately, you can't pay your executives if you don't prove to us that you have enough capital and liquidity. And guess what? Everybody adapts. And so, yeah, I wrote this op-ed piece. I thought, maybe I won't have any more friends in Silicon Valley after I write this. And there was a weird kind of silence. But then people would say, yeah, that's a pretty good idea, right? But the regulators have not adopted it, and there hasn't been the moment.
Can I say it's also, not only was there not an uproar, after that you were invited to join the Google board, if I recall.
Yes, well, people, you know, I mean, this is one of the things I love about Alphabet, right? Is that, like Goldman Sachs, the company sees the value of regulation, and then there's a debate reasonable people can have about what the regulation should be. So it did not, clearly it did not disqualify me, right? At the view is, well, okay, we all got to be really thoughtful about the right regulation.
One last question before we open it up here. So you came out in 1989-ish?
88, 89.
89.
Yeah.
Okay. This was at a time when...
Yeah, it was 24, 88.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of closeted LGBTQ folks.
Especially on Wall Street.
I remember, by the way, Marty came out and told me, I don't know if you remember this, Marty, but you told me, hey, Tommy, and very nervously, hey, Tommy, I'm gay. So I'm glad we can finally talk about this, because I'm like, of course you're gay, right? Because, you know, it was just as your little, no, but of course.
Yeah.
Now, I also remember.
Can I just, Lord John Brown once told me, he said, when you come out, it's news that you came out. It is not news that you're gay.
That's it. Exactly. That one hits me in the funny bone. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So, by the way, I also remember, you know, I let my college roommates at the time know, oh yeah, my brother Marty just came out, he's gay. And I still vividly remember one of my roommates like asking me, oh, Tom, are you okay? Stupidest question ever, right?
Drama. Yeah.
But now you go to Wall Street,
Yeah.
right? Where, I mean, you were the first openly gay. I don't know if there were others. You were one of 3 openly gay.
Tiny
executives,
numbers.
right?
Yeah.
On
Nobody.
Wall Street.
Lots of people were gay.
Of
Just not
closeted.
out. Yeah. In the whole industry, too. Yeah.
So you've seen and taken the whole journey. You've blazed a path for so many in this way. I was wondering if you could reflect for a minute on what's changed with regard to LGBTQ broadly, and what remains to be done.
So it's lovely that you describe me as a trailblazer. I have never thought I'm gonna blaze a trail. I was thinking much more that I came out and it was okay in Silicon Valley. I'm not gonna go back into the closet just for a job. And one of the many great things about Goldman is it wasn't so much in the early days, especially, that they were gay friendly. They were gay indifferent. And that was okay by me. Right? So as long as it's not a liability, as long as I can succeed based on my contributions, then I'm going to be fine with that. And maybe that was a kind of trailblazing by extension, even though it wasn't so intentional. And I worked with the small number of other people as I rose through the system of out gay people to do some things, right? So this was before same-sex marriage. We worked on getting the same kinds of health insurance coverage for domestic partners. We would pick very basic things like that. We worked with legal on giving our people the opportunity to disclose that they're LGBT in the admission in the hiring process, and then later on once you've onboarded. And that was extremely controversial, right? Is that, well, what are we going to, some people thought, well, what are they going to do with the information? And we would assert it can only be helpful, right? But that was something that we had to get people to understand. And legal, I mean, as I learned a lot about working with lawyers, you're so essential, but you can't ask for permission, right? You have to say, we're going to do this. Please tell us what the risks are. So maybe that was a kind of trailblazing. And we worked on that. At the same time, there's an anecdote I'll share that it makes me sad, right? So I was retiring from Goldman after 26 years, and the diversity networks, Hispanic and LGBT, had an event, and it was beautiful. And the Strats gave me a deal toy, one of those Lucite deal toys, and someone had gone and found the oldest code that I had written that was still running in production, and inscribed it on this Lucite crystal. And it was a feel good moment, right? And I got clapped off the floor. That's a very big deal on Wall Street, right? You're leaving for the last time, and everybody stands up and claps, and it's pretty emotional if you've been there for 26 years.
Sure.
And then someone whom I don't know came up to me and said, Marty, I used to think of you as my inspiration, but now I've decided you were just a mutation.
Oh.
And then walked away. And I've always wondered what was that,
WTF.
right? And I do think there haven't been a large number of very successful out gay people. It's been a small number, and I think all the time, right? What is success? It's being in the right place at the right time, which you don't control,
right?
With the right preparation, which you do. So I was getting a PhD in Stanford. I was an entrepreneur in Silicon Valley. That was the right preparation that Goldman was looking for. I didn't know I was going to have a career in finance, and it was the exact timing where AI had failed, but I was going to starve, and Wall Street had easier problems than medicine to solve and urgent pain, and was prepared to invest in it. And I just walked right into that with a trader who saw the future. We need to have engineers next to traders, and we need to create a digital twin of our trading business. And that propelled his success. This is Lloyd. And he took me and many people along with him.
Right.
And so I get it, right? I do not know that we have reached some new territory. When I talk to my friends on Wall Street, they say the LGBT network's not that active these days. And I wonder, maybe it's because it's just not a problem anymore, or I just don't know, Tom.
Yeah. Well, Marty, really grateful for all of these reflections. Thanks for being here today for this conversation with Marty Chavez. You can check us out at superset.com. We'll see you next time.